Well, I think when it comes to using really nice software, to creating nice software, but also equally important, just having a good experience with whatever you may be doing. Everyone sort of knows that it needs to be well designed. You should have a designer. But I don't think we still kind of appreciate what exactly that means and how it fits in day to day with the team. So I've been looking forward to the next talk to kind of get an overview, a next level type of down thinking of how design can help out with software. So let's check it out.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. I hope you have all enjoyed Spring One as much as I did so far. And let's talk design. Before we jump in, a couple of words about myself. I'm Antonia. I am the design manager and delivery lead at VMware Tanzu Labs. I've been a designer across the industry, designing digital products for about 8 years now, in pretty much every single industry you can think of. I'm born and raised in Graz, Austria, hence my lovely Austrian dialect. A little bit more about VMware Tanzu Labs. You might be most familiar with our services through our labs engagements, because the very core of what we do is we help our clients build amazing software and help them kind of like manage the operations around that. So on our labs engagements, we get together with clients and we pair and we develop products. But at the very same time, we're also kind of like teaching those top skills and top software development practices to the team. I identify myself as a designer at the heart of technology, and I've made it my mission to help everyone who is working in software better understand the true scale and value that a designer can deliver. All right, let's start with a little bit of a reflection exercise. I'm curious, obviously you can't answer me, but ask yourself, when was the last time that you collaborated with a designer that wasn't about the user interface or making something else pretty? This week, last month? Depending on your answer, if your answer was, for example, not recently, or maybe not at all, chances are that you don't yet know of the full scope of value that a designer can deliver. And that's okay. I'm here to change a little bit of that. Before we jump into the software team specifics, let me have a very short conversation around what I like to call design altitude. Most of you might be familiar with kind of like visual and UI design, but that's only the surface level of where actually design can have a great impact. There are many more levels, for example, the structure of a product, right? Kind of like crafting the overall user experience or service design. There's also a strategy level where design can make a great impact around what is your portfolio, what do you offer and where do you invest next? But ultimately, design also and particularly matters in those kind of like global leadership decisions of really centered around how can we serve our users best through our business. Going back to the software team. Since the last a bit over 30 years, VMware Tanzu Labs were back in the day pivotal labs with over 100 specialists across the globe. We've essentially been kind of like improving and innovating the way that the world builds software. And through kind of like those last 30 years, a couple of key best practices and patterns have emerged. And one of those key patterns for success in software development is having a balanced team. What that means from the very day one of when a product is kicked off, designers, product managers, and engineers work hand in hand from the very first day to the very last day, right? So they share accountability for the overall outcome, not only their discipline. What that means is the designer isn't just like a body length person that can jump in and do a little bit of UI every now and then, but that means that the designer is a core partner in the overall success from day zero. But since we all don't learn through charts but we learn through stories. I want to today share 7 things with you that will change for the better when you have a designer on your team. We can teach you to listen with humble curiosity and with the genuine intention to have your mind change by what you hear and what others say. In other words, we can help you prevent you building stuff that no one will use. What that means with our labs engagements, we run user research every 1 or 2 weeks. And what's special about that is we include every single member of the team in that research. Engineers are joining in, PMs are joining in, and obviously also designers. That has a lot of great advantages, even though it might seem odd because that's considered a design activity. But when everyone gets to listen to users, it's really kind of like you get to learn how to ask open-ended questions, how to interact with users. There's a great advantage of having more people writing notes. And ultimately, when you synthesize what has been said, more diverse brains will kind of like recognize different patterns across. So it's immensely helpful having these different perspectives. But the key thing of why we're actually doing this together with the whole team is listening to users makes you so humble. And it makes you see how often the assumptions that you had about this idea that you thought would be true actually really isn't true at all, right? So it catches you making wrong assumptions, and interviewing users is kind of like helping fix that. We can also bring meaning to your work by helping you empathize with the people that you serve, right? As the story that I want to tell here is my great designer friend, right? A couple of years back, she and her team, they built a website for a large public sector organization in Europe, and they were centered around retirement and pension, right? So the core tool of the website was a pension calculator that would help people kind of like see how much they'll get when they retire. Once again, the whole team sat in, listened to the user research, and they had a participant coming in, kind of like going through the site. And once they got to the calculator, and once they actually put in their personal numbers, and once they saw their gloomy outlook on the pension, the user research participant bursted into tears. And that was she said that was one of the most powerful moments in her whole career, because it made her realize, and with her the whole team, right? Because they've been listening in. It made them realize that website they're building, it can actually prevent people from poverty when they retire, because they can spark kind of like behavior change in people. And that's incredibly powerful, right? So bringing the meaning into the center of your team by empathizing with users. We're also great at taking chaos and bringing order to it. Essentially, every single engagement or every single product we start, it starts with a lot of uncertainty, high complexity, and we can help turn it into human solutions. Kind of like from this to that. The story I want to tell here is in spring 2020, when COVID first hit the UK. I was part of a product team developing the very first proof of concept of a COVID-19 contact tracing app, right? And I joined a couple of weeks in, I think 2 or 3 weeks in. And when I joined, I was amazed by the work that my designer colleagues together with the team have done before, because the designers have collaborated with the engineers, architects, and scientists to come up with the whole kind of like messaging logic of who would be pinged and when would they be pinged under extreme circumstances, right? So many edge cases, so many dependencies, and kind of like daily changing official guidelines. And the beauty of that, right? Like owning that thought work, and then but ultimately turning it in an app that was so easy to use for users, right? Turning all of that complexity and making it into something human. Yeah, that's a story very close to my heart. We're also great at recognizing when change is needed, and we can optimize not only on a product level, right? But we can also optimize on a team's processes and ways of working, and even across the organization. What I want to share here is one of our designers has recently joined an application modernization engagement, right? So they were tasked with assessing around, I think about 600 applications, legacy applications, assessing them, and ultimately help the client build a roadmap on how to progress on their modernization journey. Kind of like which of those apps to retire, replatform, refactor, or rebuild. And part of that assessment is certainly looking at the code, but it's also a business survey about the business value of those applications. And that's where the team has used a form to send out to all those different application owners. And even though kind of like our internal team who has developed this service, they're all brilliant minds, right? But there were some things that could have been optimized for the internal team. For example, all those survey details were manually added to an Excel sheet. And our designer was kind of like, that doesn't make sense. So they wrote an automation. Why I'm telling you this is it's not only about the user interface, but it's also kind of like looking at your own internal team processes and organization processes and seeing what we can change to the better. This is one of my favorite ones. We're great facilitators. We can enable a large group of people to come in one room and really give their best thinking. And we can take all of these pressures, things they come up with, and bring those into perspectives and into actionable insights. And why is that important, right? Today's challenges that we solve through software, they cannot be solved by a single person's brain. It's like there isn't like, you can't think that up as one single person. So getting a group of subject matter experts, technology experts, business people in the room and really kind of like helping them to do their best thinking and then turning that in a product. That's what we're great at. That example I want to give here is we run a practice with VMware Tanzu Labs that we call Design Studio, right? It's precisely that kind of a workshop. Everyone in the team and subject matter experts, as and when needed, come together and they have dedicated space to think and come up with solutions to a dedicated problem for the user. And I'm not necessarily only talking about interface, right? It doesn't have to be a UI thing that needs to be designed. It can be any product challenge. The importance is that get everyone in the room and really help them express what they're thinking and then taking forward that and synthesize it. We can help you change the world. Our designs can spark impactful behavior change in people. And this isn't only true for consumer products, by the way, right? Sometimes I get, like, when I talk to folks, I get the feedback that, oh, but that doesn't matter for enterprise software. But actually it does, right? Because we're moving away from where this one central IT is buying and purchasing all of the software for the company, right? In an age of software as a service, lines of businesses buy licenses for services. And when we move into that, it's when the experience matters a lot because the people using the software will get more of a say on what is bought and what isn't bought, right? My example that I want to give here is a couple of years back when I designed a fitness app, right? So my team and I, we designed and developed a fitness app. And the very core and the very heart of a fitness app is changing your behavior and changing your lifestyle. So it was really getting into the nitty-gritties of, we designed daily to-dos, right? We designed a gamified reward system with the badges that you see popping up on the screen. We designed notifications. We even illustrated a personalized kind of like coach figure that would take people by the hand and help them kind of like stick with it. So, and that's, again, once again, it's a consumer example, but it's not only true in consumer environments. Let's say you want to visualize data, but the people that you need to input the data aren't the people that benefit from it, right? Like timesheets, tracking teams' times, right? Like the people themselves might not benefit from it, but it's super essential because otherwise, as an organization, you can't properly understand how the time is used, right? So whenever kind of like behavior change or making sure that people stick with it is part of a product, that's when a designer can make a huge impact. We can help you tell stories and communicate in a way that inspires your audience. Now, what does that mean? As a team, you have so many stories to tell, right? It's either helping your customers understand how your product can benefit them and what it can do for them. But stories is also like when you advocate across your own organization for that chunk of budget, right? Maybe it's even kind of like sharing your work outside to the outside world to build credibility in your business. Maybe it's even like things as making sure you show your business impact in your next pay and promotion conversation, right? So stories are everywhere, and designers are the masters that can help you tell those, right? Tell them in different ways, right? Designers are great writers. We're wordsmiths. Did you know that actually UX copywriting is a whole discipline in itself, right? So the way that that the text in an application is written matters so much, but it's not only text, it's also telling stories through images, right? When you have a designer in your team, you will never be ever short of appealing mockups like you can see on the screen, and so on and so on. Or my favorite example, I used to teach enterprise design thinking to organizations. And what we would always do is making sure we have someone with us, or I do it myself, taking sketch notes from what the team has achieved on that day, right? Like big posters on a flip chart, just sketching the activities they've done and the outcomes they've achieved. And the teams would go off and take those artifacts because they were proud of them, right? It reflected their hard work that they've been doing so far, and they put it in their team spaces. And at one point, after one of these engagements, I received an email, I think it was like three weeks later, by a team member saying, hey, okay, this is so amazing. The head of department went by our space and they discovered this beautiful poster that we sketched back in the day. And we had a conversation about it. And ultimately, that conversation helped us build a relationship with this person. And they helped us fund our product for the next half year, right? Like getting organizational buy-in through really cool things that hang around and people can see. Okay, I realize you're not all in a position to just go off and hire a designer, right? Let's not kid ourselves. But there are a couple of concrete steps that I can advise you to do, that you can do right now. The very first step is, if you haven't already, make friends with a designer, right? Sounds odd. If you're a designer and you're watching or listening, make friends with an engineer, right? Like the people who surround you at work matter, and when they're only kind of like, they have similar brains to yourselves and they do similar things to yourselves. So making friends with a designer and kind of like expanding that cycle for a little, yeah, that's the very first step I'd encourage you to do, if you haven't already. However, there are 3 more things that I want to share with you today. So a little while ago, I think about a year ago, VMware Tanzu Labs has decided to open source their whole product and software practices. So we've open sourced, there is a website that you can go where we share every single one of our workshops, formats, tips and tricks that work for us in order for yourself to try some of those. I'd encourage you to learn about what assumptions are as a first step, right? What does your team believe to be true about the software that you're writing? But ultimately, you don't really know because you've not tested it, right? So make those assumptions explicit, learn about what assumptions are, write them down. It's going to be a great list of things that you can then ultimately test with users. The second thing I encourage you to do is learn about what user research is. It's a super simple thing that you can start as a team. You don't necessarily need to hire an expert for that. You can start doing that as a team. Get out, talk to users, observe them. So learn about what user research is and give an introduction to your team about it. And I've mentioned it before, the format, we call it a design studio. I'd encourage you, whenever you encounter your next product challenge, or maybe when you want to kick off your next feature, right? Get together with the whole team, run a sketching session, but anyone can lead that. You can be a little bit of a designer in that to really help your team do the best thinking. In case you're wondering, there is a Slack channel to this talk, and I'm going to be sharing all of those precious links in the Slack channel for yourself to go back to and read into. So those are the 3 steps. And if you want to go a step further, and if you want to invest in learning more about design as a non-designer, those are the top 3 things I suggest you're spending your times with. If you're an engineer, right? Read this article, How Designers and Engineers Can Collaborate Closer. It's a relationship that I care a lot about, and I've made a lot of experience with that. Read that article. It's going to have some helpful tips and tricks. There is also an ebook. So VMware Tanzu Labs has published a whole kind of like PDF or design guides about what design means, how we think about it, how does it fit into an agile environment and in an agile software team, right? That's for free. You can go to the site and download it. It's a nicely layouted book with beautiful illustrations. And if you want to go a bit further and actually start reading a book, I would suggest you invest your time in understanding and learning about user research, but how it's done in a lean context, right? So knowing just enough so that you and your team can proceed on an evidence-based manner. That's my book recommendation for today. All right, everyone, let's bring design to the very heart of every software team, and you can play your part. Thank you for watching. Today, I'm going to be hanging out in the Q&A room for a little bit, right? So join me and join on Slack. Thank you very much for watching today.
Well, that was great. I think if you haven't understood or don't already understand how design can help out with a team, with the organization they're working with, now you've got a good an idea of it. And as she was saying, she'll be around in the Slack channel and the Q&A that you can go to. Speaking of, if you want to look up the Slack channel, get your fingers on your keyboard, because this is what it is. It's session why every software team should have a designer, with hyphens instead of spaces. And you should go there to check out the Q&A link where you can ask those questions, and come back in just a little bit, not too long, to take a short break, and we've got another good talk coming up.